This is episode 114 of the Rise Up podcast. We're a morning radio show hosted by Steve and Tim on Family Life, a network of stations across New York and Pennsylvania. This podcast is a weekly conversation designed to help you think and laugh and keep your eyes on Jesus. If you haven't already, subscribe today so you don't miss a single episode. And find out more about our show at familylife.org.
Thanks for letting us be part of your morning. It's Rise Up with Steve and Tim on Family Life.
Got a lot of holidays in the year. Oh, but none of them are quite like Easter.
That's true. Easter. And you say to anybody the word Easter, and it has to conjure up memories for some, especially the first thing that comes to my mind, besides the actual reason for Easter and the significance in history of Easter, is that I'll never forget when our little son was, I want to say, 2, 3 years old, and his very first Easter egg hunt at church. It was after church on Sunday, and they included all the ages. Sometimes, they do the different ages. This was all the ages of the kids. I would say it was probably from, little kids like our son at the time to maybe 10 years old or whatever.
Okay.
So it was everybody going in, and they had a huge circle with a rope around it. So all the kids stood outside the rope waiting for the countdown. And you see, they weren't really hidden because all the plastic Easter eggs, were out in the middle of this big, big, big circle. And so they were going to count down, and that was all the kids were excited and everybody's waiting. And I'm talking about a lot of kids. It was a big church. So I want to say there was 100 kids or more, so a lot of kids. And this is, again, our son's very, very first Easter egg hunt. He was old enough to kind of know what's going on, but still pretty young. So they have the countdown, 10, 9, 8, and when it gets down to 1, and they release the ropes, and everybody goes. And we put our son down on the ground so he could run out there. But this was so much more activity than he'd ever experienced in his life at one time. Just a stampede of kids screaming and running for the eggs. And our little son, as soon as we put him down on the ground, he said, "Go." He just froze and looked at all the activity and went,
Oh, no.
Just the biggest cry in the world. So I had to pick him up, and we kind of walked out. I kind of let him down. He would pick up a few eggs at a time.
This is what we call fun, son.
Right.
This is enjoyment.
Right. But I remember, the first words that Jesus said after he was, do not fear.
Oh,
right.
There you go.
Do not fear,
yes.
In Jesus' resurrection. And I wish I had said those words to our son before. Do not fear. I wish I had looked ahead. Anyway, so that's just one of a fun memory of Easter. Again, not the significance in history, but the significance in our family.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't really like the significance of Easter either, this memory for us, but man, it was always special in our family every year. And I might have even shared this here before. For Easter, the thing we would do would be the egg. When I say egg toss, I don't mean the kind of egg toss you're thinking of. These were confetti eggs, okay? And this was a battle. This was a battle royale every Easter in my parents' yard. So you'd have the aunts and grandmother and everybody in the family. You'd start saving eggshells every time you cooked for like the couple months leading up to Easter. And the ladies of the family would keep these eggs. They'd wash them out. They'd fill them with confetti, and they'd glue them back together. And then everybody would get a couple dozen eggs on Easter. And then you'd go out and do this battle royale tossing confetti eggs at each other, and they'd explode on contact. It was a super fun thing. Always was fun, like the Easter egg hunt was intended to be for your young son, Steve. But much like his experience that went south one time, one year we didn't have confetti. So they all got filled with birdseed.
Ooh.
And let me just tell you that an egg refilled with birdseed hits different, quite literally, than a confetti egg does. Wow. There were some ouches that year. Yeah. But like these fun traditions, whether it's an egg hunt or an egg toss or a confetti egg battle royale, like they're nice. But I wouldn't say like everybody has an Easter. Oh, we always have to do this thing for Easter. Have you noticed like Easter maybe it doesn't get some of the pomp and circumstance that some of the other holidays do. And I'm thinking as Christians, and this is no guilt for anybody here, but I do think, wow, if we were just talking about raw significance of like what a holiday means, couldn't it be the other way around? Like Easter maybe being the biggest one?
Yeah, isn't it interesting how we look at, we'll just take Christmas. The birth of Jesus that we celebrate, Christmas, that's important. But I think we'd all agree that the world makes and even sometimes that's not a guilt trip, but we make a bigger deal out of Christmas. It's a bigger thing. And maybe that is just the world and marketing and commercialism and those kind of things, because that is significant, the birth of Jesus. Understand that miracle. However, if it wasn't for the resurrection of Jesus, what would this Christian walk? There wouldn't be a Christian walk.
No.
There would be this wonderful, wonderful teacher, a great person, this Jesus, who taught and did wonderful things. Jesus, fine teacher, fine, leader, all those things. But without the resurrected Jesus, we don't have the faith, the hope, that hope that we find in Jesus. That's the difference. So Easter, like you said, Tim, it's interesting. Easter is the most significant holiday for the living Christian because it's the living Jesus in us.
Yes. Paul says that if Christ was not raised, we are of all people most to be pitied. Like literally, he's writing and saying, no, guys, you don't get this. If Jesus didn't come back from the dead, then this whole thing isn't just like a nice social experiment. It's a giant waste of time.
Right.
And you're a loser, basically, if Jesus wasn't raised. Because that's the whole hope. That's what we're pinning everything on. So yeah, I love that perspective, Steve, that really if we're looking at everything, and I understand you can't have Easter without Christmas and Christmas without Easter. Like they're linked, of course, because it's Jesus' mission. But as I was thinking about this, it is kind of interesting that you wonder if it is as you already said, the kind of commercial aspect that makes Christmas such a big thing sometimes. And I'm wondering if does that even maybe work in Easter's favor? Because think about this. There aren't a lot of distractions for Easter season. It's kind of hard to miss the reason for Easter because, sure, there are secular traditions for Easter, but none of them are maybe so exciting that you'd be tempted to forget about what the holiday is really about. Christmas, if I'm honest, sometimes I'm so excited about all that food and all those fun traditions I have with my family, I can forget, oh yeah, we're doing this because of the baby Jesus. But I never get so excited about chocolate eggs that I forget, oh, Jesus came back from the dead. So maybe it being a little bit smaller of a holiday leaves a little more room for me to remember what the real reason for Easter is.
And it is a great discussion point because still to this day, when I read things or hear things from people, it's a great starter for discussion when non-believers say, wait a minute. And I thought this before I believed too. So it's a great question. I mean, it's an interesting question, but educated adults say, well, why do they call it Good Friday when he died on the cross? What's so good about somebody dying on the cross? Why is it good?
Wow.
That doesn't sound good, right? And you're like, well, I understand what you're saying. Because that day, yes, if you were there, it was sad. But without that happening, you don't have the resurrection on Sunday. That's why it was good, what it led to and the good. So you get that. Maybe you'll get that question even this year or see it. It's like, oh, why do they call it good?
Yeah.
That's a great conversation opener.
That's amazing. I never thought about how much of an opening of a ministry opportunity it is. Like if somebody asks you that question, that's basically like they're just saying, Christian, could you please tell me the gospel? What is your hope for eternal life?
Right.
Okay. It's an open door. Let's walk through it. Yeah.
Another perspective that I got after I believed, but it was, I don't know, several years in, I had never looked at it this perspective of after the crucifixion and the resurrection and the stone being rolled away. Right. And I had never heard this perspective. And because I was a new believer and it took a few years when I heard it, I'm like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. It's like the stone wasn't for Jesus to come out. Jesus could go right through the stone. He didn't.
It's true.
He didn't need that. Jesus could go right through the stone. The stone was for the other people to see that he wasn't there anymore. And that opened their eyes. It's like, wait a minute. How did this happen? So that's just another perspective of the amazing yes, the miracle of Easter, the resurrection, but it's the bottom line for why we believe and why we have that faith and hope in Jesus Christ.
Kind of makes you want to pray for an opportunity to let somebody else know, hey, Easter is a really big deal to us. Here's why.
Reminding you that God is in charge today and every day. It's Rise Up with Steve and Tim on Family Life.
Does Shasta, your dog, snore?
He does. He does snore a little bit. I mean, it's nothing obnoxious, though.
Okay. I have an idea. Not only do I have an idea for a product, I have a name for it.
Boy.
Yeah, well, this should be good because names of products should describe what it does, right? Sometimes you get like, what does that even do? I don't know what that my idea is a good idea, I think. And also the name for it is perfect.
Wow. Okay.
Here we go. Got in discussion. There couples always, you have that discussion of, oh, he snores or she snores, or it's usually he, but or people snore and that keeps you awake and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then as you get older, I mean, you seem so many people now, they used to be rare, but so many people have those CPAP machines.
Yes, right.
Because that's good for you, because that's sleep apnea is a very dangerous thing. So everywhere you go, nobody doesn't know someone that has a CPAP machine. That's what I'm thinking. All right. But then it got me wondering about dogs. There's some dogs who can snore really loudly. And some dogs sleep with their owners or in the same room.
That's true.
Keep them awake. And,
that could
and
be
sleep
irritating.
So what's wrong? Tell me what's wrong with the idea of a CPAP machine for a dog. Tell me what's wrong with that. Tell me what's wrong with that idea. You can't. See, you can't.
Or you wouldn't let me.
Well, that too. We're running out of time. But now do you want to know the name for my product?
Yes, let's hear the name.
It's obvious.
What?
The C-PUP machine.
The C-PUP machine. That's adorable.
Tell me what's wrong with that, please.
You don't have to be a morning person to join us. Actually, you don't even have to be a person. It's Rise Up with Steve and Tim on Family Life.
You tell me what's wrong with my idea of having a CPAP machine for a dog who snores. I think that's a great idea. What do you think?
Well, why not? I mean, whatever works, right?
Exactly. See, Rita, that was my thought too. Okay. Why not? They make them for human beings. Because you probably know somebody who has a CPAP machine, right? I mean, we all do.
No, honestly, I don't.
Well, my old saying is everybody but Rita knows everybody with a CPAP machine, but you don't know anybody yet with a C-PUP machine. Which, when that comes out on the market, Rita, you can say I heard it from Steve first at Family Life. That's what you can say.
Okay, I'll remember that.
When do I get to say why it's not a good idea? That's what I want to
do. We might not know what God has planned for today, but we're going to face it together. This is Rise Up on Family Life.
How you doing?
Good.
I hear you guys talking about CPAPs for dogs.
Right.
Now, I got a short sound clip for you to hear.
Sure.
It's the St. Bernard.
Okay.
Thank you for that, I think. Yeah.
Okay, so CPAP for dogs, Steve?
Yeah, C-PUP.
C-PUP? All right.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a really good idea, actually. It's a really good idea.
You got a St. Bernard who does that? You need the C-PUP.
We love it even more than bacon. That's a lot. You're listening to Rise Up on Family Life.
No, it was fun earlier in Holy Week asking you about borrowing a tradition from another holiday to make Easter even bigger, right? Because some of these other days on the calendar get a little more attention than Easter. Oh, we got some creative ideas how to make Easter feel even bigger this year.
Ginger, and I live in South Dansville.
What other holiday are you going to borrow an idea from to make Easter a little more exciting this year?
July 4th.
Do we get to do fireworks?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
Sunrise service really wakes up the neighborhood when there's a technician doing
that
fireworks.
Would be pretty neat.
Phil from Bloomsburg.
Phil, what do you want to do for Easter this year?
Now, this might not be considered a traditional holiday, but for those who remember Seinfeld, there's Festivus.
Yes.
On the eve of Christmas Eve. And they do the airing of grievances as part of the Festivus tradition. Now, here's the Christian church. We are to confess, and we are to, i.e., air our grievances before the Lord and ask for forgiveness. And that is offered through the cross to Calvary at Easter.
Yes.
And that is a feat of strength.
Yes. Oh, that's so good.
So when's the last time you heard Easter and Festivus put in the same sentence?
Are you ready to face the day? No? That's okay. You can hang out with us until you're ready. This is Rise Up on Family Life.
I am the stone. Yep, the one that was rolled away. Covering of the most famous empty vessel in history. No big deal. There are a lot of questions about what happened in the garden that Sunday morning. Believe me, I've heard them all. What was it like when the Roman guards fainted? Hilarious. Also awesome. Who was the first one to see Jesus alive again? Oh, you mean besides me? Did John really beat Peter in a race to the tomb? By a mile. Bro can preach, but he can't run. I know a lot of people find it hard to believe that Jesus really physically rose from the dead. That kind of thing doesn't happen every day. Yeah, that's why we call it a miracle. It's also why we call it faith, too, by the way. The way I see it, God can either do this stuff, or he can't. For what it's worth, I think he can make even the rocks cry out. Happy Easter from Family Life.